Money FM 89.3, best of breakfast. Eco Money on Money FM 89.3.
Welcome to Eco Money. Now, estimates by the United Nations show that the global gap in funding for biodiversity is at $700 billion, and some 88% of last chance ecosystems are found in countries that are facing moderate to high debt stress. For these countries, debt burdens and the lack of access to international capital are enormous hurdles preventing them from meeting biodiversity and climate goals. Now, this is where nature bonds can come into play. With the latest launch of the Nature Conservancy's latest project in Ecuador late last year, the global conservation organization now has 6 nature bond projects in implementation, and that's expected to unlock approximately $1 billion for conservation. For more insights on what nature bonds are and how effective they are, we're joined by Melissa Garvey, Global Director for Nature Bonds at the Nature Conservancy. Melissa, thanks so much for joining us on Money FM today. How are you?
I'm great. It's an honor to be here.
It's great to speak with you today, Melissa. So let's start first, with the basics. What exactly are nature bonds and how do they help fund conservation and climate action?
Sure. So the world is facing a triple crisis right now. We have biodiversity loss, we've got the climate crisis, but there's a third crisis that's making it much more challenging, and that's the debt crisis. About 2/3 of developing countries are already in or they're facing debt distress. And you already shared that massive gap we have to be able to finance the support that nature needs. So we were able to develop an approach that works. It's what we call nature bonds projects, because we know that nature needs more funding of all sorts, whether it's philanthropy or public funding, but there's also a scalable and proven solution of what we call the nature bonds approach or nature bonds projects, which combine the ability to couple debt refinancing so that countries can be able to then apply technical assistance in science and planning and policy so that they can be able to achieve their conservation and climate goals. Now, the projects that we have been developing, they help countries fund and achieve these goals without adding extra strain on government budgets or even increasing debt levels. And the way that we develop these projects is really, it has 3 key parts. And the first, at the heart of all of these projects, these nature bonds projects, is what we call a debt conversion transaction. And in a debt conversion, a portion of a government's existing national debt, it's refinanced on more favorable terms. And what that does is it creates savings that can then be redirected towards conservation and climate adaptation and mitigation and sustainable livelihoods. So with all of these projects, we're able to put together these debt conversions and get better financing terms because we work with development banks and development finance institutions to get credit enhancement or political risk insurance. And that credit enhancement lets us get lower interest rates, and that creates the cost savings that are then able to be put into conservation and climate funding. So each of these projects involve that financial transaction, and that financial transaction also has significant commitments for nature and climate. And we track all of those commitments. Another key portion of these projects, though, is just ensuring that there's effective stakeholder work so that there's really robust planning that supports the conservation. And the third element is just really strong transparency and accountability, having the financial flows go through an independent conservation trust fund.
Yeah, well, this all sounds great. And I like how you said about the combination of debt refinancing with science, planning, and policy to protect ecosystems. Now, a big development in this space was the Nature Conservancy's recent debt conversion deal in Ecuador. So understand that there was a refinancing of about $1.53 billion of international bonds and generating over $800 million in net fiscal savings for the country by 2035. Can you tell us, how do you secure the financial resources needed to launch such large-scale projects like this?
Sure. So we're so excited about the Amazon Biocorridor project. So that project alone is expected to generate about $400 million for conservation and climate action, and also set up an estimated $60 million in an endowment over time. And so this project, it was co-designed with indigenous peoples and nationalities, the conservation commitments and conservation approach that's being supported for this project. And the conservation outcomes on the project is supporting new protections for 1.8 million hectares of terrestrial and wetland ecosystems. And we're also able to ensure the protection of 18,000 kilometers of connected rivers, improve effective management of 4.6 million hectares of existing protected areas, and also be bolstering climate resilience and supporting human well-being in the Ecuadorian Amazon. But specifically to your question, how do these pieces come together? Well, it's a significant amount of collaboration, bringing in the right partners. So in this particular project, Bank of America acted as the sole arranger, the book runner, the coordinator, and the initial purchaser of the new financing that was used to fund the tender of the pre-existing Ecuadorian sovereign bonds. And they also acted as the sole dealer manager for the tender. So having Bank of America was just an essential partner. But we really couldn't have done the project without the credit enhancement that came from the U.S. Development Finance Corporation. They provided political risk insurance of about $1 billion for the new financing. And the Inter-American Development Bank also issued a $155 million partial credit liquidity guarantee for the project as well.
Wow.
So it's these partnerships that allow us to be able to develop these kinds of projects.
Yeah, so lots of collaboration needed, it sounds like. And we often hear about, billion-dollar commitments for conservation efforts. Can you also tell us how you determine the financial scale of each project and what factors influence the amount needed?
Sure. So, we track where are the places in the world that have outstanding debt where countries may have high debt to GDP ratios, for example, and where there's critical nature and opportunities to be addressing climate change. But in many of the projects, it really comes down to, is there outstanding debt that can be refinanced, like Eurobonds, where they can be bought back at a discount, or where there's an opportunity to create really significant savings that can be generated from a refinancing with credit enhancement partners, where we could then use those savings to divert the resources into conservation and climate outcomes. And when we're creating the conservation and climate goals for each project, we spend time workshopping with our government counterparts. We start by looking to see if the country has made ambitious commitments to protect, say, 30% of their land, oceans, or freshwater. We try and identify, do they have what are called NBSAPs, or National Biodiversity Strategy Action Plans, or do they have significant Paris Agreement commitments where we might be able to have some nature-based solutions really be driving some of those climate mitigation or adaptation goals. So really these projects are developed by just identifying what debt is available and then spending time just working with our government partners and negotiating to find that right fit of ambitious outcomes, but where we also can be reasonably confident that the government's going to be successful with both the debt refinancing and being able to use that funding to support the conservation and climate outcomes. So it's a balance. I mean, we want these ambitious outcomes, but, our goal at the end of the day is we want the country to succeed, and we want to make sure that nature and climate are succeeding as well.
Yeah, so nature bonds seem like a very innovative solution, especially for countries dealing with debt burdens and limited access to capital. But what would you say, Melissa, are the biggest challenges in executing these projects? Like, how does the Nature Conservancy navigate regulatory roadblocks, for example, in different regions?
Yeah, there's no shortage of challenges, unfortunately, but we're kind of used to that at this point. What we try to do is focus on creating really durable solutions so that these projects can withstand, say, changes in government or, various regulatory frameworks or changes in nature. So one really important aspect of all of these projects that supports that implementation is that we typically require participatory planning in the creation of any new protections or management plans in the places where our projects take place. So what that means is we're bringing together various stakeholders and rights holders that have an interest in, as, for example, in the ocean space, that might mean that we're bringing together fishers or tourism operators and some of the neighboring communities. And so the idea is that our projects can be stronger when we've got input from all of these stakeholders and rights holders. And it also helps to ensure that we've got their buy-in and engagement in the eventual implementation. So those things really help us get stronger outcomes in projects. And The additional piece that's essential for all of our projects is having an independent conservation trust fund that all of the financial resources in these projects flow through. And why that's important is because it allows us to have certainty that there's going to be transparency and there's going to be reporting. And we take that seriously so that investors and donors, community members, and the public can really trust the integrity of these projects over time.
All right, so I know that we focused on the Ecuador project, but TNC has 5 other nature bond projects in Seychelles, Belize, Barbados, Gabon, and the Bahamas. Are you able to share some key milestones from these projects, and how do you ensure that the funds raised are being used effectively, to protect ecosystems and support local communities there?
Yeah, those are such important goals for us. For more than 70 years, the Nature Conservancy has been pioneering these kind of innovative solutions to protect nature and ensure that there's that sustainable financing that's, that core of all of these projects. And so you're right, we now have 6 projects that are in implementation. We started in the Seychelles, and that project, the goal of it is supporting Seychelles and putting over 30% of its ocean space into marine protection and providing the financial resources to help support that as well. And they're just at the point of finalizing and being able to put into law all of those protections. So really significant milestones that we're excited to soon be celebrating with Seychelles. In Belize, closed a transaction there in 2021, and we refinanced nearly $500 million, and we were able to buy back bonds at about a 45% discount. And so what that means is that we were able to both create some fiscal space for the country as well as put in financial resources to help Belize in its commitments to be protecting up to 30% of its ocean. And so right now, Belize has been making really strong progress on its milestones. And so they're right at the point of protecting about 25% of their ocean already. And they've been embarking on a sustainable ocean plan as well, and able to deploy some of the $180 million that was generated from that project into conservation work on the ground. We've had successful projects in Barbados, Gabon, as well as the project that we talked about in Ecuador. But I also want to highlight that in 2024, in addition to closing the Ecuador project, we also closed an important transaction in the Bahamas. And in that project, we were able to refinance about $300 million of external debt and unlock $124 million for marine conservation in that project over the 15-year span of the project. So we're really excited about that project for a couple reasons. One is, the Bahamas is just a phenomenal partner with a lot of really important ocean resources. And they're so committed to having there be strong management of their ocean, and we're excited to be working with them in this project. And that project, the transaction itself, was also another pioneering effort where we were able to use an innovative approach where we involved not just a development bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, which is a great partner, but we were also able to bring in the first of its kind private credit enhancement from an impact investor from Builder's Vision, as well as insurance from AXA XL. So just exciting innovations, as well as watching the projects that we have underway be able to just continue meeting their milestones and supporting conservation and climate goals.
Yeah, well, a fantastic overview on the fantastic work that you guys are doing. It's clear that nature bonds are paving the way for a new approach to conservation, one that balances financial realities with urgent environmental needs. Melissa, thanks so much for joining us today and for your insights. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, and happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day to you. Thank you. We've been speaking with Melissa Garvey, Global Director for Nature Bonds at the Nature Conservancy. Stay ahead with Money FM 89.3.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.